How did a man who won the Nobel Peace Prize find himself in handcuffs 29 times? And you may not know who I'm referring to, but it's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a civil rights activist, a pastor, and just a good man who held Christian values. And he's responsible for the Montgomery bus boycott, the March on Washington, Voting Rights Act, and of course being a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize and being co-pastor with his father. And Martin Luther King used his childhood, pastoral, and political experiences to drive him to be the face of the civil rights movement. By using Christian values, King led peaceful protests that changed civil rights in the United States forever. Let's begin with his early life and background. You think, how does one become such a great leader? What could have happened early in their life to get to that point? And since King was a child, he had influences in his life, like his father, who was a pastor, and also his grandfather on his mother's side, who was a pastor. And so he had these great men in his life to give him godly values and teach him about the Christian faith, and to show him how to be a leader, among the people in the congregations of the churches. So he had this to look up to, but he said it wasn't until he was 6 years old that he really had his first experience with racial discrimination. Dave Stotts of Drive Through History claims that King, whenever he was 6 years old, his best friend was a white boy. And the white boy's father wouldn't let King play with his son anymore. And it says that Martin Luther King Jr. felt, like he was hated. He didn't understand why. He talked to his parents about it, and he told them, how can I ever get along with a race that hates me? How can I ever move forward past this experience of losing my best friend just because of the color of my skin? And so King, he told his parents this, and they responded with scripture, and they responded with just good godly values, and telling him that he's supposed to love his neighbor, and that he was supposed to, it didn't matter how he was treated, that he was supposed to show God's love to everyone. And so from that moment on, he set out to do that. He set out to show God's love even to those who opposed him or were against him because of his skin. And so at 19 years old, Martin Luther King found himself feeling called to ministry just like his father and grandfather. And so he went to college. He earned 2 bachelor's degrees, and he earned a doctorate in philosophy, in theology. And with this degree, of course, is where we get, he got got his start in ministry after he graduated with this degree. And so he comes back, he becomes a pastor, and then later on he becomes a co-pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church with his father. And so by being co-pastor, that kind of gave a little bit of, it gave him room to still be a pastor and still feel like he was doing what God had called him to inside the church, but it also gave him enough time to where if he needed to be away for anything, he had the liberty to do that. And with that, some of the things that he established through the ministry was the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And Martin Luther King was a proud pastor. He loved serving people. He loved showing God's love to others, and he used that to guide him throughout the rest of his life, even until the night before his death. Whenever he was killed, he preached a message that very night before. He preached all the way until the end. Even once he got in the public eye, it never stopped him from pursuing what he felt like the calling that God had placed on his life. And so he also had the political side of things, being an American activist who was bold and strived to not just be the face of the civil rights movement, but just to make a difference in it. I don't think he set out for the fortune and the fame of being in the public eye, but it just came naturally with his leadership skills. And we see that in the March on Washington, where 200,000 people showed up in support of the movement that he was pushing. Brandon Ambrosino wrote an article about Martin Luther King's relationship with Malcolm X, and kind of the opposition of how they led the civil rights movement. Both of them were two of the most popular people during that time. But their styles were very different. King led by making peace and striving for peaceful protest, whereas Malcolm X, his thoughts were kind of just by any means possible. And I think that we see Martin Luther King and how much success he had because of his peaceful protest. That was his heart from the beginning, and I believe that he stuck with it all the way until the end. And he never lost sight of his faith, and he used that to change the United States of America. And if we look even today, Martin Luther King has made such an impact on our society and our culture. There's no more segregation. Everyone is equal, and we keep fighting, and pressing towards that idea that, that Martin Luther King started even back in the 50s and 60s, and for all men to be equal and for everyone to be treated the same. Dr. King once said, like the early Christians, we must move into a time, sometime a hostile world armed with the revolutionary gospel of Jesus Christ. With this powerful gospel, we shall boldly challenge the status quo. Thank you.